The recent trade tensions between Canada and the United States highlight a growing trend of protectionism in global trade. This trend has been gaining momentum over the past few years, with various countries adopting measures to protect their domestic industries. In early 2025, former President Donald Trump, known for his America First policies, re-emerged into the political spotlight, advocating for aggressive trade measures against Canada. His return to the political arena brought back memories of his previous administration's confrontational trade tactics. He reignited his rhetoric of imposing tariffs on Canadian goods, citing concerns over trade imbalances and unfair trade practices. This move was seen as a direct challenge to the established trade norms between the two nations. This stance, reminiscent of his previous administration's approach, sent shockwaves through the global trade landscape. Markets reacted swiftly, with stock prices fluctuating and businesses scrambling to assess the potential impact. Canada, a country with a long history of close economic ties with the United States, found itself at the heart of this trade dispute. The Canadian government and businesses were quick to respond, emphasizing the importance of maintaining a stable trade relationship. The situation escalated quickly, with Trump's threats of a 25% tariff on a range of Canadian imports. These tariffs targeted key industries including lumber, steel, and automotive parts, which are vital to the Canadian economy. While he initially wavered on the implementation, eventually signing an order delaying the tariffs for a month, the damage was done. The uncertainty created by these threats had already disrupted supply chains and caused significant concern among businesses. The uncertainty and the aggressive posture adopted by the former president created a climate of unease and distrust between the two traditionally close trading partners. This atmosphere of tension made it difficult for businesses to plan for the future. This escalation marked a significant downturn in U.S.-Canada relations, raising concerns about a potential trade war. The prospect of prolonged economic conflict loomed large, with both sides preparing for a protracted dispute. The business communities on both sides of the border expressed apprehension, fearing the negative impact on their operations and the broader economy. Many companies began exploring alternative markets and supply chains to mitigate the risks. The escalating tensions served as a stark reminder of the fragility of global trade relations and the potential for economic harm when protectionist measures are employed. The ripple effects of such policies can be felt far beyond the immediate countries involved. This situation set the stage for a series of retaliatory measures and countermeasures, with Canada, particularly its provinces bordering the U.S., taking a strong stance against what it perceived as unfair trade practices. Protests and political actions became more frequent as tensions rose. The re-emergence of protectionist policies under Trump's influence signaled a departure from the principles of free trade that have long governed U.S.-Canada relations. This shift was seen as a significant challenge to the established economic order. It marked a return to an era of economic nationalism, where countries prioritized their own interests, often at the expense of global cooperation and economic stability. This approach has the potential to reshape international trade dynamics. This shift in approach has far-reaching consequences, not only for Canada and the United States but also for the broader global trade order. The world watches closely as these two economic giants navigate this turbulent period, with the outcomes likely to influence global trade policies for years to come. In response to the looming threat of American tariffs, Canada wasted no time in preparing retaliatory measures. The Canadian government, along with provincial authorities, began to strategize on how best to counteract the economic pressure from the United States. Among the most impactful responses were the actions taken by the province of British Columbia, a critical geographical link between the lower 48 U.S. states and Alaska. This region became a focal point in the trade dispute, given its strategic importance in the transportation of goods. British Columbia, led by Premier David Eby, announced a series of countermeasures designed to send a clear message to the U.S. government and protect its own economic interests. Eby emphasized the need for a strong response to what he described as unfair trade practices. At the heart of British Columbia's response was the imposition of tolls on commercial trucks transporting goods through the province to Alaska. These tolls were seen as a direct way to impact American commerce and highlight the interconnected nature of North American trade. This move, while seemingly targeted at American businesses and consumers, had the potential to disrupt the flow of goods and add significant costs to businesses operating in Alaska. The tolls were expected to create logistical challenges and increase expenses for companies reliant on this route. The decision to implement tolls was not taken lightly. It followed extensive discussions and debates within the British Columbia government, weighing the potential economic benefits against the risks of escalating the trade conflict. The British Columbia government argued that it was a necessary step to protect its own economy and send a strong signal to the U.S. that protectionist policies would not go unanswered. The move was framed as a defensive measure in the face of aggressive trade tactics. However, the move sparked controversy, with some arguing that it would harm businesses and consumers on both sides of the border without necessarily achieving its intended goal of deterring American protectionism. Critics pointed out the potential for unintended economic consequences. Beyond the tolls on Alaskan-bound trucking, British Columbia took additional steps to demonstrate its displeasure with the U.S. position on trade. These measures were part of a broader strategy to apply pressure on American policymakers. The provincial government announced a halt to all government purchases of American products, a move designed to put pressure on U.S. businesses and demonstrate the seriousness of the situation. This boycott was intended to show solidarity with Canadian industries affected by the tariffs. Furthermore, in a symbolic gesture aimed at states seen as particularly supportive of Trump's policies, British Columbia stopped the sale of alcohol from Republican-led states, including Alaska, in its provincially run liquor stores. This was a pointed effort to target specific regions. These measures, while perhaps largely symbolic, were indicative of the broader sentiment in Canada. They reflected a growing frustration and a willingness to take a stand against what was perceived as economic aggression. The message was clear: Canada was prepared to stand its ground and defend its interests in the face of what it perceived as bullying tactics from its southern neighbor. The actions taken by British Columbia were a testament to the province's resolve and the broader national sentiment. British Columbia's decisive actions were echoed by other Canadian provinces, demonstrating a united front against the renewed threat of American protectionism. Across the country, provincial governments, regardless of their political leanings, voiced their support for the federal government's stance and prepared their own countermeasures. This unified response underscored the seriousness with which Canada viewed the situation and the importance of presenting a united front to the United States. Ontario, Canada's most populous province and an economic powerhouse, announced a 25% surcharge on electricity exported to the United States. This move, aimed at a key sector of the U.S. economy, was designed to inflict economic pain and pressure the U.S. government to reconsider its protectionist policies. Meanwhile, Yukon, a territory bordering Alaska, took steps to limit American access to government contracts and ceased purchasing American products for its government-run liquor stores. While these actions may have seemed minor in comparison to the scale of U.S.-Canada trade, they represented a significant symbolic blow and demonstrated the resolve of even the smallest Canadian jurisdictions. The Canadian government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, was quick to throw its support behind the province's actions, framing them as necessary and proportionate responses to the Trump administration's aggressive trade policies. Trudeau, while acknowledging the importance of the U.S.-Canada trade relationship, emphasized that Canada would not be bullied and would stand up for its interests. He called on the U.S. to engage in meaningful dialogue to resolve the trade dispute and return to a more cooperative and mutually beneficial relationship. The United Front presented by Canada and its provinces sent a clear message to the United States. Protectionist policies would not be met with passivity. Canada was prepared to weather the storm and defend its economic interests, even if it meant risking damage to the historically strong relationship with its southern neighbor. While the trade dispute between Canada and the United States was sparked by events far removed from Alaska, the impact was keenly felt in the northernmost state. Alaska, with its unique geographical position and economic dependencies, found itself particularly vulnerable. Alaska, heavily reliant on the supply chain that runs through British Columbia, found itself on the front lines of the trade war, facing higher costs and potential disruptions to the flow of goods. The state's economy, already fragile due to its remote location, was put under additional strain. The tolls imposed by British Columbia on Alaskan-bound trucking had an immediate and tangible impact on businesses and consumers in the state. The most immediate impact was felt in the transportation and logistics sectors. These sectors are the lifeblood of Alaska's supply chain, ensuring that goods reach even the most remote areas. Trucking companies facing higher operating costs due to the tolls were forced to pass on these costs to their customers in the form of higher shipping rates. This, in turn, affected the prices of everyday goods. This increase in transportation costs had a ripple effect throughout the Alaskan economy, impacting businesses of all sizes and driving up prices for consumers. The cost of living, already high in Alaska, saw further increases. The Alaska Trucking Association expressed deep concern over the tolls, warning of potential supply chain disruptions and job losses in the industry. They highlighted the critical role of trucking in maintaining the state's economic stability. They argued that the tolls would disproportionately impact small businesses and remote communities that rely heavily on trucking for essential goods and services. The tourism industry, a vital sector of the Alaskan economy, also faced challenges. Tourism, which brings in significant revenue, was not immune to the broader economic impacts. While the cruise ship industry, a major driver of tourism revenue, was initially spared from British Columbia's countermeasures, the uncertainty surrounding the situation and the potential for future actions created anxiety within the industry. Business owners worried about long-term impacts on their livelihoods. Businesses dependent on Canadian tourists, particularly those in border towns like Skagway, experienced a decline in visitor numbers as Canadians opted to vacation elsewhere in solidarity with their country's stance. This solidarity had tangible economic consequences. This decline in tourism revenue had a knock-on effect on local economies, impacting jobs and livelihoods. The interconnected nature of Alaska's economy meant that no sector was left untouched. Beyond the immediate economic impact, the tolls also raised concerns about food security in Alaska. The state's reliance on imported goods made it particularly susceptible to supply chain disruptions. With a significant portion of fresh produce and other essential goods transported by road through British Columbia, any disruptions to the supply chain had the potential to lead to shortages and price spikes, disproportionately affecting vulnerable communities. The most vulnerable populations faced the greatest risks. The situation highlighted Alaska's reliance on its southern neighbor for essential goods and services, and the vulnerability of the state's economy to disruptions in this critical supply chain. The need for a more resilient and diversified supply chain became evident.